I still have to print it out for my wife.
And I
She's still paper.
right.
Oh, really?
Here you're guilty. And I
I'm the luckiest person alive that I have no idea how it even happens.
They told me that they will say
Oh.
they do not care about childcare.
If I knew, it probably wouldn't be
They
good.
figure it out too bad. Yeah. Because I was like, I don't have daycare on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They don't care about that.
Legal authorization.
How's it going?
They'll tell you to figure it out.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 6th, 2017 meeting of the Abington Finance Committee. We have a pretty good crowd here tonight compared to a few of our recent meetings. We do not have a ton on the agenda, but we're getting closer to the end of the year, which means we're getting closer to the start of the next budget season. So we're going to start looking towards that. But first, we do have our town manager with us tonight, and should have some sort of an update, I would assume, on the final status of free cash.
Yes, and I know you would have received an email on this, I believe. I know that the former chairman was emailed.
Sure I did.
To you. Our final free cash certification was 1.174 million, which we were pleased with, not shocked with. A little bit short of last year's, but if you remember last year, we had about $700,000 in sewer betterment closeouts.
Yes.
So all in all, fairly similar when you equalize it with last year's.
What was that amount?
1.174.
Yeah, you can have it for your notes. 1.174 in general fund free cash. So, and as you know, we tend to use free cash to balance any snow over deficits from the end of the winter. We'll do that at town meetings, so we don't carry it in next year's budget. And my understanding is that we're not going to have any snow, so.
I was under the same understanding.
Yeah, you've heard that report too, yeah.
My eldest daughter, who is a senior and doesn't have to make up snow days, on the other hand,
Yeah.
is under a very different
Good.
understanding.
Right. And so between that and whatever capital decisions that are collectively made for annual town meeting. But obviously, it's a good, strong number again this year, so we're pleased with that. Again, not shocking, but we've, over a number of years, about, last half a dozen years or so, we've averaged about in the 800,000 plus range, not including last year's bubble, so it's again a good, strong free cash number.
Do you recall what last year's overage was on the snow budget?
It's in the 300s, wasn't it? 'Cause we were paying off the remainder of the year before and last year's.
Yeah,
But
because last year was the last year of that 5-year
Right.
overdraft from the that.
No, I was just wondering for just last year alone, not for prior years.
I'm gonna.
Was it in the threes because
think
of
I think the
No,
over-
for its own year, because we
Okay.
questioned
Yeah.
that
I
it
think
was
the
$6,000, but it
overall-
was 3 from the winter 15 and then 3 from the year prior.
I think that sounds familiar to me.
Okay.
I think it was between 3 and 4.
It was like 336 or a weird number like that.
Once again, that's, I think, on an average year, it's been in the $400,000 to $500,000 range on average, which I know, we go through this every year. It begs
No,
the
I
question,
know.
why don't we just budget more and climb up towards that?
No, I know exactly why we don't.
It always seems reasonable until you try to make ends meet going into town meeting every year, so.
So you're saying every year you go over?
Yes.
In
It's the
snow
only
and
account
ice removal.
in the budget that Department of Revenue allows you to overexpend every year.
Just asking the question, sorry, but if every year you go over, why wouldn't you budget more? In every other business you would.
Yeah, because, essentially because you'd have to make severe cuts in other areas of the budget in order to budget in the snow and ice removal
And you,
category. So, and like I said, it's the only area of the budget that the state allows you to.
Sure.
And once again, but you do have to budget a minimum of what you budgeted the year before.
Sure.
In order to be eligible to overexpend.
Yep.
So in theory, what you would like to do is to start to build it up slowly so that it doesn't adversely impact other areas of the budget.
Yep.
We try to do that.
And do they go by outlooks or anything like that, or is it just, hey, we spent this much, this is what we're gonna spend next year?
Yes.
Pretty
yes,
much.
and
Okay.
it's- yeah, that's essentially, we try not to rely too heavily on it.
It's never even that close.
Yeah, I don't know how to look at the weather,
Yeah.
so trust me, I'm not asking if you.
Right,
When
because
we-
again, keep in mind, you're budgeting and, like, for instance, the end of next week, I have to provide to the Selectmen and Finance Committee a first draft of next FY19 budget.
19.
Yeah, so I don't know what the weather's going to be
Yeah,
for
sure.
this winter, never mind next winter. So, so it's gonna be, so you can't really rely upon any, weather forecast for next winter when I have to have a budget for, like, the budget year beginning next July, which is for the following winter, so
Sure.
it's very difficult to try and predict at this point what next winter's gonna, if the winter
So we're
of next
looking
year's gonna
two
look
winters
at,
ahead.
so, yeah.
It just seems to me that would be one of the things that you would try to sort of get higher on, even,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if this is the only one that you can go over on, then
And that's the reason,
why not
because,
maybe let it happen, but,
because of the difficulty, one of the things that you're not allowed to do, and the school budget is the only piece of the overall municipal budget. The school committee is able to move funds around line items in the school budget. And the non-school side of the budget,
okay,
we're not allowed to move between
Money
line
from-
items, except for the last couple of months of the fiscal year, which is only the last few years. The Department of Revenue, the legislature has allowed for some more flexibility. So if you have a significant over expenditure, if a really bad winter, or even a mild winter these days, and you over expend your snow budget, there's literally no way to get the money from.
Sure.
Because you cannot move money around. You'd have to go to a town meeting, you'd have to cut other budgets. It would be literally chaos. That's why we're allowed to overexpend that part of the budget.
sure,
What then happens, though, is the following year, the first thing you have to do is raise the amount of over expenditure, and it comes right off the top of your following fiscal year budget.
okay,
That's why what we do at the end of, rather than do that, we balance that budget at the end of the fiscal year. So we would use any free cash or any other surpluses in the budget to balance that budget at the end of the fiscal year, rather than carry it into the following fiscal year.
Okay.
That's how we do it, have been doing it in Abington. Different towns may do it in a different way, but that's how we do it here.
and then just last thing, so if you overspent, do you have to spend at least the same amount you said the next year?
You have to
Or the
budget at least.
The budget, the same amount that you spent, or the budget, the same amount that you
The
budgeted?
same amount you budgeted.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah,
budget.
that's where it's not computed in my brain.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah. Ideally,
I
you don't
gotcha.
spend as much, but,
Sure.
but you tend to budget minimally, because, because you can.
sure.
And it tends to be a soft spot if things are tight, we'll try to
Sure.
tighten that up a little bit,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we know that, because it can be, you
Because you
can
can,
deficit
right,
spend.
you're
So
not
that
gonna-
tends to be the first place that we
Right.
look, like, all right,
Sure.
well, is there a way to back out some money out of the snow
Right,
budget?
You're not
or-
gonna, presumably, you're not gonna, not to get, emotional, but you're not gonna lay off a teacher
Sure,
instead of increasing a snow budget. You don't legally have to.
yeah,
That's just
understand.
not what you do, so.
thank you, I just.
Yeah, no, it just seems to defy common sense
Sure,
if you don't know the laws that surround
yeah, yeah,
snow
absolutely,
budget, yeah,
sure, thanks.
yeah. A lot of things about municipal finance defy common sense. So,
Do we have any other free cash-related questions? I actually have one myself. Is the sort of bit of an increase over the last several years because of new growth in the town, or what do we attribute it to?
I don't know that the growth, I think we had, there was a little bit more growth, I think, at the former air base, so I think it was about I believe $119,000 in fees or I'm not sure fees or so that came from there. little more than anticipated. But overall, I think there was about close to $400,000 specifically in additional revenue. that
From our
wasn't-
portion?
Yes,
of the base?
yes. And overall revenue that was not specifically anticipated. And reasonably, not exorbitant, but reasonably healthy closeout of unexpended funds, but nothing exorbitant. So just again, a reasonably good year in terms of, I'd say, not hyper-conservative budgeting, but I'd say for the most part, just a pretty good revenue year in terms of conservative revenue forecasting.
Good. Good to hear. Anyone else? So that brings us to the draft budget and where things stand. What are we looking at for timelines? I think you already said next week.
Yes, this past, last week we, about, what is it, December?
It's December.
Approximately in and around Thanksgiving, we had collected our internal budget proposals from all of our departments, not including the school department. As you know, they have obviously their extended internal budget process. I'm not sure who the liaison is to the school department, Peter, so.
January.
Okay, so you're more involved in that. And last week, we had our internal discussions with all of our department heads individually. Next week, the end of the week, I will be providing to the selectmen and the finance committee a first draft of a proposed fiscal year 19 budget, which is obviously a difficult thing to produce. That's what the charter requires. And again, the charter, that part of the charter hasn't changed. It was pretty much drafted in the 1950s. Didn't anticipate the fact that, we have a major proportion of our budget is based upon state aid, which the state won't even produce its own budget, which is local aid portion, until January. So, but we do our best to make good faith estimates. So, and for the last few years, it's been a reasonably good guide for the remainder of the budget process. So we hope that it will remain that way. So there's obviously a lot of work we're doing internally, and God bless the town accountant, Sue Moquin, who really despises me this time of year. Probably year-round, actually, but this time of year in particular, in terms of really getting into the nitty-gritty. One of the things that is a little bit different is that I think this is the, well, actually not completely new, but with, we're trying to, our Public Works Department is only into its, I think, second full year as a consolidated department, and so there's that's a little bit different in terms of putting some of those numbers together, some consolidations there. So I'm learning a little bit about that and pulling some of those, pulling some things apart there. So, so hopefully after next, I think the 15th, so next Thursday or Friday, that'll be basically the end of next week. We'll have that transmitted to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee as an initial guideline for how the rest of the process may play out. I don't know what you presume your timetable is going to be for meeting with department heads. I can't remember.
That's our next agenda.
Did you do it last year as a one-day festival, or did you?
No, we did.
No,
Week by
definitely not.
Okay.
Week by week.
Well, again, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Didn't know what your thought process might be, so. But we obviously still have a lot of numbers to crunch and pull apart. Next week's not gonna be fun. Some of the key components, though, again, some of the DPW, moving numbers in the DPW. The other key piece is that this year, we have 2 positions in the police department that are grant funded. Those grants expire the current fiscal year, and those positions to maintain level staffing will have to be absorbed into the department this year. One of the goals for the past several years, our goals, Board of Selectmen and mine, were to bring the department back to its high watermark staffing, which was at some point in the 90s, which would ultimately mean adding 2 additional personnel officers than even the current staffing. But this year would not be the time to do that unless there is funds, though I guess that would be unless there are some state aid figures forthcoming that we just can't anticipate at this moment. But the priority right now would be to absorb those 2 grant positions into the budget figures of the department as they stand right now. So that's the only real significant piece, priority that I think you could look forward to right now.
The overall tenor over the last couple of years has been level services.
Yes.
Is that the same this year?
Yes, that's correct. As I said, the only, the number 1 priority had been to do our best to restore positions in the police department. And like I say, as much as we'd like to deal with police positions and particularly, ultimately, restore some of the detective branch of the department, I'm not sure we'll be able to get that initiative in place. That's ultimately where I think the town needs to be heading.
Can I ask a question?
Sure,
that's,
please.
controversial?
No, go right ahead, Katie.
So paying overtime that's paid in any department right now,
Yeah.
the cost of staffing, even +1, is not less than paying overtime? So to staff a department, right? So to staff.
Well,
Police,
obviously, police and
fire,
fire,
yeah.
obviously, obviously the areas where overtime can be prevalent. And to
Right.
the extent that retaining those positions in the police department, absorbing those positions into the police department, there's
I
clearly an offset by not paying, for not savings in overtime
Right.
by absorbing those, yes.
So if you absorb those 2 and then you said
It's not
it
a
needed
one
to
to-
be plus, ideally it would be +2 more. So, and not controversial, so the cost of overtime currently being paid to cover the hours that those positions would fill, it's not more cost effective to hire 1 person than to continue to pay overtime? Because the cost of overtime and.
Yeah,
So-
I guess I believe, I guess the point is that it's not a one-to-one cost. Yeah, if
Okay.
those positions were not to be retained, you would be paying a lot more.
Because you're paying for benefits
in
and
overtime,
time
yes,
off,
yes.
paid
Yeah.
time off and all that.
And-
That's just how I look at
Yeah.
my
And-
staffing is
yeah, and-
overtime versus the position.
Yeah,
In addition, one of the things we've talked about with both the police and fire chiefs as they've come in over the years on that topic specifically is it's also not a one-to-one of you hire someone who's going to be working, say, for example, 40 hours a week, and that eliminates 40 hours of overtime.
Right.
Because of the way the department runs, it might eliminate 20 hours of overtime
Right.
that would have been, and still leaves you with 20 hours of
sure.
And you're
Well,
also,
it-
payments, so.
Yeah.
you're also talking about the possibility of a detective, which really wouldn't impact on the police officers on the street.
Well, again, keeping in mind with these positions that we're talking about retaining, that
No, I understand
there would
that.
be additional staffing that
I
we would
understand,
hope to, in the next phase of filling the positions to get to the high water mark.
Right.
But that doesn't happen if we can't at least retain what we have right now that we've been able to obtain through grant funding. And again, keep in mind too that some of these officers are officers that have been were DARE officers, or I'm sorry, school resource
School resource
officers. And
officers.
that's a function that obviously we'd like to retain. Those are very important. That has a lot of that's not just a PR function. That has a lot of benefits for crime prevention and other.
Well, and we've invested the money into those officers
Yes.
to
Yeah,
train and
Yeah.
go through the
Sure.
academy, and it's a shame to invest
Yeah,
that kind of money and then
absolutely.
end up,
One other question, does
happens often.
the state or somebody else, ever looked at the police department and said, you're at a good level, you're not, or, you know, some outside?
I do not believe that
Auditor.
someone's done that. I mean, I can't speak, that would be a question for the chief, but
Right.
Are there any sort of stats on stuff like that? Like, you know, for 10 million
Per
people,
capita.
there's, yeah, per capita.
again,
Yep.
I wouldn't consider myself the expert on that at the moment,
Sure.
but
I'm pretty sure he's given that information before too,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah, I've never heard it, so
99%
that's
sure
the
that
reason why.
it has shown us the staffing levels of
yeah,
other areas that are equal
sure.
Yep.
I
to
would-
this type of
I would-
community and what their
right.
staffing levels are compared to ours, so I
It's
know he
pretty
does
equal.
have
It's
that
very,
information.
It's definitely something that when we do talk to the chief about his budget, that's a good question.
No,
Sure.
I think you'll
And ask.
probably be very
He usually
impressed
is
by the
very,
amount of staffing he has on the street at any given time, considering the activity that's going on in this department on a daily basis, so.
Great.
and I know at points over the last couple of years, there've been staffing departures. Are we full-staffed currently in the police department?
Well, the answer is yes and no. The budgeted positions, of the budgeted positions, there are 4 of them either in or pending academy training. There is one who is currently injured on duty or pending retirement status. The others are filled, so that's essentially where we are at the moment. So, so we're not up to full staffing per se at the moment, but they're not, all the bodies budgeted are not on the streets at this time.
Right.
Would that contribute to the overtime stuff?
Well, ultimately, yes. They're obviously filling time shifts, that is correct.
That's what I mean, so maybe when those bodies happen, it will,
That would obviously, yeah, that
Yeah,
would,
it's great.
that would be ideal, yes. It is a very young department, no doubt about it. There's been a lot of, retirements, and there have been officers, no question about it, who have moved on to other communities in recent years for various reasons. And hopefully, the ideal situation, hopefully within the next, 4 to 6 months, will become, at the very latest, all of the existing positions will be academy trained, on the street, and that would be the ideal situation, so. And knock on wood, barring no injuries, so. Say it's tough place out there sometimes.
yeah, sure.
Yes.
Those are the essential, initiatives. There's also still a collective bargaining agreement, a police collective bargaining agreement that we hope is winding towards a conclusion, which will have cost implications, and a couple other collective bargaining agreements that have reasonably modest cost implications, which may be part of the budget document next week, but they would be fairly modest from anything you would see as part of a police collective bargaining agreement, which is, again, now almost 4 years out, so.
Do we have any other budgets that are collective bargaining agreements that are still out?
Well, again, we have DPW union, which our supervisory group, which is the library group is now coming up, and the fire union. So we're pretty much just at the point where they're pretty much all coming around again, so.
Are those
Seems like
3
they're-
all currently in agreement, but their agreement is ending with the next fiscal year, or are they? Already out.
They would all be impacting next year's budget in some capacity, yes.
18,
Fiscal year 19.
19.
Yeah, there with this,
I put the number wrong.
correct, yes.
Yeah,
This, we are in FY 18
Yeah, I
currently,
understand.
yes. I get mixed up myself, it's, yeah.
Yes, sorry.
Are you hearing any rumblings or talk at all about the state aid what it's looking like.
Not significant conversation, no. And honestly, I'm actually on, one of the MMA's, I'm on the fiscal policy committee, and even I don't hear a whole lot about what direction. I mean, as you probably know, it's been a rough couple years for state revenue collections. And they've even been surprised themselves by, in what has been a reasonably good economy, why the revenue doesn't seem to correspond to the performance of the overall economy, so.
Like, as in not growing?
Yeah, the state revenue collections don't seem to, haven't corresponded to the overall
Seem to
performance
match the
of
growth of the state, of the
Exactly,
economy.
it's kind
Huh.
of interesting, yeah, so the state's had to make a lot of cuts at the state level, which fortunately hasn't trickled down to cuts to local aid, but how that would necessarily impact what the state's budget proposals will be for next year's local aid, it's hard to say, but, I mean, local aid has tended to be a little bit of a sacred cow in terms of holding it harmless, but that's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be significant increases, and, it's hard enough when your tax base is only growing 2.5%.
Right.
But if your low state aid isn't growing, well, that's great, but when your fixed costs are growing at 6, 7, 8%.
And even when they
everything
hold,
else is growing, your personnel costs are growing at X%.
Right.
And your revenue is only growing at 2.5%.
Yeah, that's weird. That sounds weird that it wouldn't be growing at all.
well, and even when they do hold state aid harmless, they end up hitting us somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
Like
Yeah.
they, all right, we won't cut your state
We're
aid,
not gonna
however,
cut Chapter 70
Losing people?
school aid
Well-
because,
Like, is the population going
but,
down?
right, and so then you're gonna have to make it up in your,
yeah, but some obscure piece
Budget
of state
somehow.
aid, that's not a sacred
that goes to
cow.
a different, right,
But in the end, it's still your bottom line
have-
state aid,
right,
2/3 of which goes to your school department.
right.
So,
They
yeah,
just take it out of a different,
right, so it's a little bit cynical, but, yeah. But we're used to being cynical.
think optimistically then, I suppose.
So I don't know what your plans are, what schedule you want, but obviously our office is happy to facilitate whatever schedule you'd like to put together for,
So the schedule that we have done over the last couple of years has been 1 to 2 nights a week with usually 2 to 3 department heads spanning from generally around late January to late March or early April as we prepare for the budget. I think more into March, and we have a couple of weeks that we tend to miss for like February school vacation and things of that nature.
I have to look back at my notes, but I do remember that last year, I think, a couple of the bigger departments, I think we should separate this year.
I think you might be thinking of 2 years ago. We had
Last year we separated them.
yeah, I think we
Well,
No,
had.
they've been, always been separated, but,
Fire was with, I think, veterans, and veterans ended up going a lot longer than they usually have.
okay, maybe
And
that's what it
that's
was.
why we should probably think about doing maybe police and fire on their own night and doubling up.
Okay, that's what I think we,
But that's exactly.
Those bigger departments.
Fire rescheduled, I think that's what
Yeah,
happened.
fire
That was
rescheduled,
part of it.
Yeah.
some did water rescheduled.
Yep.
and
Right.
I say maybe DPW rescheduled
Yeah,
too.
they did.
Yeah, we had things move around quite a bit at the last minute last year, so.
And plus, we had a shorter schedule because we had to get into the gym before it got
That's true.
closed.
Yep, we lost
But we've
about
got
3
new
weeks.
members this year, so
Yep.
I think those bigger departments, because there'll be more questions, and just
Yes.
for everyone to make sure they get all the information.
Although, I have to say though, that May worked out pretty well though. it really did work out okay, instead of going into June.
Yeah.
I mean, it
You
did.
know, I think in terms of
I don't
getting
think it
Getting
hurt
a
us. I
quorum,
don't think it
it's-
hurt us at all.
I think
It
it worked
definitely
out
didn't
pretty
hurt,
well.
yeah.
You know. But I think you're right, though, it did facilitate, it was a little bit of a different
We
schedule.
were against the gun.
But
Yeah, I think what,
Yeah.
I think the very end of our schedule got really compacted.
It did.
I think the end of when we had our meetings with department heads to when we had to actually vote on, when we had the warrant and when we could have the petitioners in and when we had to actually vote on each of the articles got very compacted.
Just in my experience, it always does.
Yeah.
I just would
Yes.
definitely say that those
bigger
bigger
departments on
departments,
their own.
the school, the police, and fire,
DPW.
and the DPW, those are pretty substantial.
And then we definitely had, like, a bunch of the other departments, definitely could have multiple. Like, I think we capped at 3 on a night. I think with some of the smaller departments, we could do 4 or 5 even.
Ooh, I don't know if I would do that, I'm gonna discuss it amongst yourselves, but you know, you get so much information.
What did you
3
say, Matt? I'm
departments,
sorry.
he was saying like,
Said like 4, 5.
For an hour's meeting?
No.
Oh,
These meetings don't tend to go.
Some of them can be pretty quick,
Yes.
though, some of the smaller.
Some of them can be.
quick, you know.
Just on a quick,
The budget department head meetings are not.
has there been talk of
Bring some coffee.
moving the meeting back to June, keeping it in May?
Have there been any discussions?
There's been no discussion.
once you're getting towards where school's out, it's tough to get a quorum.
What are people's thoughts of nights in the week or potentially, like Rick mentioned, like a Super Saturday kind of a meeting where we have a lot of fun hanging out together forever?
I like you guys, I don't know if I wanna have a super Saturday.
Say it again?
Schedule.
Which part? She likes you
Schedule
guys?
thoughts as we move into January, February, March.
Yep.
Are there nights that are not good? If we look to do, say, like a Tuesday and a Wednesday, or a Wednesday and a Thursday in a given week? Or potentially do one Saturday where we do several departments and have a longer day to try.
Starting at 7 o'clock
Not
during the week?
during the week, yes,
Why can't we start at 6?
because some of us
I'm-
can't get here by
I
6.
can't get here, but I didn't get home until 6:15 today, so
I
I'll
didn't
be
get
here
home
by
yet.
6.
What are Mondays like for
I'm
everyone?
fine on Monday.
Like a Monday and a Wednesday, so it's kind of, you know, 2 days in a row.
I'm teaching Monday and Wednesday
Monday.
next semester. So Wednesday, I would be able to make it for 6, but I wouldn't be able to do it Monday and Wednesday.
No, I mean 7.
I mean, yeah, sorry,
7
my class
o'clock
is
on-
5:15 to 6:30, so I'll barely make it for a Wednesday meeting. But I won't be able to hustle here Monday and Wednesday after teaching and working all day.
What about Tuesdays or Thursdays for people? Do you have any?
I don't, yeah, Wednesdays
Tuesdays
are
work
good.
better.
Tuesdays are fine for
Tuesdays and
me.
Wednesdays, yeah.
So the idea of a Saturday doesn't work for people? I'm just asking.
I don't
It'd be
care. It
tough
doesn't
for
matter to
me
me.
for a Saturday.
What time,
all day. I have young
what
kids,
time
it would be-
on a weekend?
So on a weekend, we would look to start in the morning and do several hours. Like do,
Morning meaning,
meaning maybe 9, 10 o'clock in the morning and do 4 or 5 hours. Bring in a large chunk of departments.
I mean,
A 9 to 1 on a Saturday wouldn't be that bad.
Yes.
I work
What
on
was that?
Saturday.
I said a 9 to 1 on a Saturday wouldn't be that bad if we promptly ended.
or if you could, I mean, not to, I don't,
Then
I
you just
hate
bundle,
mornings,
you
but-
do it once and you bundle it.
I'd rather
And then
bundle
you
it
come-
than
and then you do that
come
with
twice a week
Yeah.
for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
do that combine that with a few nights, and then you're pretty much done.
I don't know that we'd need to do twice. Why were you thinking twice a week if
just-
we started in January?
I
Maybe
don't,
we just start
I'm
earlier.
just trying to figure out schedules and
So
what-
if we
what
started in
would work.
January and did every, even the
wouldn't be
end of
later
January.
January, right?
1, 2, 3.
Have to be later January, correct?
Yes.
Even February.
Because I know the school budget's not going to be ready
Yeah, they're not gonna.
until January.
We start until February.
We don't usually go
That's why
over
we're
school
late.
Yeah, so if we start in January, we should be fine.
later in the process, so.
Saturdays.
I mean, was it, internally,
Oh.
it's easy, we have a few people in a room, we sit here for 3 full days, so we have the luxury of
That being
sitting
your
here for
job.
3 full days, You don't have that luxury, so.
I mean, that's 12 Wednesdays through February through the end of April.
That's a lot of Wednesdays, but, getting into April, but you also have warrant
We're-
articles
But
eventually.
it's also February vacation, April vacation.
Right, but I mean,
That's
there's
a lot.
12
Departments are there
Wednesdays to
total?
go through and
Right, how
no
many departments
forum.
are there total?
So,
How many
There.
departments, Rick?
I don't have mine.
What about Skype?
Skype. Where's the, do you
Not
have
yet,
the,
huh?
do you have the liaison?
Sure,
That
We can
list?
put them on Skype.
in my never-ending stack of papers.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I guess you could do it anywhere at this point.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically 16.
And like, so,
Yeah,
Like,
that's not even right.
that's not, yeah, so,
15.
15.
And you said only 4 need to be on their own nights.
Yeah, and
So
some
that's
of them.
4
are-
nights,
some
and
of
then
them
so
are
that's,
small.
we're now down to 11. How
And
could
then
we
last year
combine
coupled-
enough?
At last time,
So we
we
really-
did 2 departments.
Yeah, you could definitely do.
And you could,
2
bundle
or
like
even
with
3 on
3
some
in
of the
one.
really small
For
ones.
the Financial offices, your
It'd be
accounting,
crazy
Yeah.
to give up
Assessing.
Saturday.
Yeah.
treasury, and your, a lot of your fixed costs. You'd bundle all that in one night, knock off, a quarter of those 15, 16 in one night that are all kind of related and
Could you do
as
them
an
on tonight?
example.
Like,
And you'd bundle your-
after
The person has to come here.
And you'd bundle
No, but
your,
I'm saying, like, could they do it at 7 o'clock? Could they come up, when we're here, we're already here?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what it would
That's what
be.
we
do. Yeah.
They'd
Oh, I thought
come
you said
during
like-
our meeting.
Yeah, yeah,
They
okay.
come during our.
I thought you were saying, but what I'm saying is, can't we just like tack on another hour?
Yes, we do.
All right, so that's what,
We'll be tacking on several hours.
Some of
I thought you were
these-
saying
some of
add in
these
a
will go-
Tuesday and a Thursday.
Possibly, to try and figure out what we need to do to.
I don't think we'll need to.
We shouldn't need to. We haven't in the last, I think the last 2 years, I think we maybe did 2 in a week once.
I think it,
Because we,
yeah, I think
we
it's,
with the Board of Selectmen on
Yes.
both those years, we've done
Yep.
one joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
I think it's if you get, I think it gets, if you get bogged down with a lot of warrant articles,
Yeah.
I think, as opposed to the mere, just the budget discussions with department heads, I don't think that is that onerous. I think if you get bogged down with 40, 50 warrant articles, that can become a problem.
When are the warrant,
Yeah,
will
what's
the
the deadline?
warrant articles be due
We
in?
don't know when the
We haven't
meeting
even-
is.
You don't even know
That's
yet,
good,
right?
yeah.
So,
How long before,
We can put together a
It's-
schedule and,
how, it's
can re-
10 days before the meeting that the warrant has to be posted? So.
well, the recommendations.
recommendations have to be
Recommendations have to
posted.
be posted.
I
So
think
just-
if we,
Just for the sake of argument, if you're gonna think in terms of, backing up the schedule, that if there's, last year, the meeting was in, what was the date of last year's
It's
meeting?
the
May, yeah, it was
22nd,
like
I
the
think.
third week,
So if you're thinking that, the,
fourth
I think by mid-May at the latest, recommendations would have to be posted just generically.
week, yeah,
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
say generically
Say
May
generically May 10th.
10th. That still gives us plenty of time. One meeting in January, if we started
To maybe start on the
the-
24th.
end of January, I would start the 31st.
Okay.
With department heads, I'm not
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that, but I'd start department heads on January 31st, and then schedule them through the Wednesdays in February, except I would take off the February vacation,
Yep, April, taking off April.
and take off that April vacation, that's 2 weeks. And then plan a day for a snow day and no
Yesterday's
quorum, and you still
I mean,
have,
last year's schedule.
And
So we started on March 1st last year,
Oh, so we'll have.
and we met every Wednesday.
So if we have a whole extra month, we should.
yeah.
And in the next couple of weeks, we
Fine,
will
right,
get
yeah,
a projected
that's 4 extra.
schedule for warrant articles, submissions, and we'll get that to you too. Matt, so you can figure that into your planning.
That would be good.
make that all work.
That's what it was that, to remember to, ask each.
Schedule.
Or to ask each department, if they know what their warrant if they know what they have for warrant articles, or,
Yeah, because the capital program is something that's maintained every year, so won't be any surprises
Right.
for warrant articles. There's nothing there's no major items that we haven't been seeing for a long time. The Fire chief ultimately is looking at another engine, a ladder truck,
In Firehouse.
and he's got some lease purchase, options that he's been researching, and, yeah, well, another station, yeah, but that's not something you're gonna have a warrant article on.
just to make sure
that's a
though that
long-term problem,
we
yeah.
go over those
You
when
know,
they're,
but
when
yeah.
each department's here, so that we don't have to,
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
that'll take
Right.
care of,
So you're not bringing
Back,
bringing
or-
department heads back in to go over warrant articles.
or we're not
Doing it
starting to
all
go
at
over
once.
warrant articles and then
Sure.
saying, oh, we've got all these questions for this department head that we
Yes.
had in a month ago. God bless you, Deb.
Bless you.
If we could,
Exactly, so. Okay.
Do you want me to work with Dory again on booking the specific departments? That?
They listen-
So-
They listen to her, they don't listen to me.
So with all of that said, do we want to meet in mid-January and go over what the plan of the schedule is, and maybe with where we started in the beginning of March last year, maybe start in February this year?
when are you required, do you know the date that you're required to have the, draft?
December
15th.
15th, I'm required to transmit to the selectmen, and then I think by January 15th to the finance committee. But
Okay.
obviously, I'm not gonna send the selectmen something I'm not gonna give you the courtesy of. And, but if that is updated, if there are updates to that, as time goes on,
Which there
I'm just gonna continue to
generally are.
update everybody, so. And it's not 1954. It's- As there are
Send something with a force and
updates, everybody's gonna get updated recommendations, so,
Could we meet on the 24th to get copies of the draft budget?
Yeah,
That
that's what
gives
I-
a
that's
week
what I was
leeway
thinking.
of just in case anything.
January
Um,
24th meet, and then maybe on February 7th, start the department head meetings.
FinCom meeting, the 20th January. 6 PM, right, Peter? Sorry, 7 o'clock. Sorry, February 7th,
Yes.
and
And then I'll work with Dory on the full schedule from there.
presumably successive Wednesdays.
Because we started March 1st and did every Wednesday, but then at the end, we were adding an extra day and you're doing 2
Yeah.
days. So if we start a month earlier, we should do it.
And I
Yeah.
think there was some
There were some
Reschedule.
departments
articles
that
too,
pushed,
and
there were a bunch of
reschedules, articles that we had to,
So we'll give ourselves more.
had more questions on, and so that will definitely give us time.
It's just an update.
Yeah, that was just,
So romantic.
sound good? I'll let Nancy know, because she had sent me a message about letting her know when our meetings are scheduled for, so.
Excellent.
Anyone have any other timeline questions? Before we move on to our regularly scheduled parts of the
Okay.
agenda?
Do you need me for anything else? Would you mind if
I don't think we do. I think we can let you.
Nuh-uh.
Deb needs you to punish you.
Deb knows where to find me, don't you, Deb?
I do.
Yes, you do, okay. Very good, thank you, everybody. Have a lovely evening. And
Thank you,
Bye.
you too.
Thanks, Rick.
All right, do we have any liaison reports?
I wasn't here last
Nope.
week, so fill me in on that.
So we have the assignments of liaisons for the different departments, and if you've talked with your department heads since the last meeting and they had anything for you to share or report,
Can somebody send me the list?
I can, yes. I thought I already sent that.
You
but
may
I'll-
have, I just wasn't here
Never
last week.
seeing it either, Matt.
I'll make sure I send that out.
So the answer is no, for me.
Correspondence. We have a pile of correspondence here. We have a correspondence from the New England Disposal Technologies Incorporated. I guess know about it's just an advertisement for collecting hazardous waste disposal, tank cleanings, etc. And they have a short video to see how we can take advantage of their services. If anyone wants to take a look. We have mail from the Massachusetts Municipal Association. And they are letting us know that the Finance Committee Handbook, the 2017 edition, is now available for download in a secured area on the MMA website. Dues-paying members, which we are, we can download a digital edition of the handbook if we want, and we have the URL, which I will write down and email out instead of having anyone have to worry about making copies.
Great.
And I will write that down afterward to not hold you up. We have the municipal demographic data from the Mass Municipal Association as well. Abington, number 1 on the list. If anyone wants to take a look at that, I'll pass that one that way to start. And then we have 2 editions of the Beacon, the Massachusetts Municipal Association's monthly newsletter, and we'll get this one to Renee, and this one to Greg.
Thanks.
So they can look through. And then we have mail from the South Shore of Votech. And this is letting us know that the assessment from the preliminary assessment has been changed and has been reduced by $60,000 for the 2017-2018 assessments for each of the 8 towns. The Abington
260 or
reduced by 60,000. The Abington reduction is $14,106. So a little bit less that we have to pay for the VOTEC. Does a very good job of maintaining their budget and keeping things trim. And we have a breakdown on page 2 of town-by-town reductions. Ours, Rockland's and Whitman's are the highest reductions. Pass that around. And we have another very identical looking envelope from them. And we have an unstapled version of the same 2 pages. Pass those this way. And that is all of our correspondence. We do have 2 meetings worth of minutes to go over.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 27th, 2017.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Did anyone find anything in the minutes that were so expertly prepared by our secretary, Deb?
Can I ask one question? Again, I wasn't here the other day, but this might sound terrible, but why does the high school need a forklift?
We're on
Oh,
this one
sorry.
first, so.
Let's go, let's,
We'll go to that
let's
one
stick to that, then that was my only question for the day.
Taking them in order. so.
Yeah, shoot.
Any questions on the September meeting minutes? Without any, all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? No one needs to abstain from that one. All right, now we get to the October 25th minutes, and I believe there's a question. And I know Pete discussed the forklift
'Cause-
at the time when he gave the update. Do you want
The forklift is needed because they haul all kinds of stuff around, and it's not one of the huge,
Sure.
but it's big enough so that they can haul cases of stuff. You've been in new school?
No,
Well, it's a big school.
yeah.
So it's just used, and it's 2 stories, and they can lift pallets of stuff and move it all throughout the school. Basically, that's the reason.
Yeah, I just for me, I just didn't know if they used it enough to where, like, they could cut a deal with those guys Shaughnessy right up the street. They could, rent theirs whenever it was.
No, they
That
would
was
use,
the question.
no,
of,
they'll
like-
use it enough.
Yeah.
You should go to the school, it's a beautiful building.
No, I wish I had some
Do you know what the cost of it was?
Not offhand, I'd have to dig into the records.
We can
Do
discuss
you remember
it.
when we talked about it?
It says on this, October 25th.
25th, okay.
But
Yep.
I don't know if that's really,
All right. Okay.
Any other questions on the October 25th minutes? Any motions?
Motion to approve. October 25th minutes.
Motion to approve,
I second.
and a second. And without any other discussions, anyone that was here can vote yea or nay. Anyone that was not here will need to abstain. So anyone, all those in favor of approving the minutes? Those opposed? Abstaining? You got the count then?
What?
You got the count? All right. Is there any other business that anyone would like to bring up before we adjourn until 2018? Without that, are there any other motions?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
A motion and several seconds. All those in favor of adjourning? Opposed? Abstaining? The ayes have it, we are adjourned.
back to you.
Yes.
Yeah,